Ben Sherwood, Chris Edwards are back with us now, and we were talking before the break. People, 10% are trying to lead. They're trying to wake up their friends and neighbors, so the 80%, and saying, we got trouble, we got to get out of here. How do you wake up that 80%?
There are two ways. In California, for 30 years, they've been telling us big earthquakes are coming. So what happens? There are two ways that people actually prepare for earthquakes. One is the ground shakes, and they realize a big one's coming, and they go and prepare. They get supplies, they develop a plan. And the other is the constant reinforcement of messages in school, in public awareness campaigns, that something could happen, and do you have a plan for your family?
We have the exact opposite happening.
We've known for years that there's a fiscal earthquake coming, a fiscal catastrophe. Members of Congress, all 535 of them, they know a disaster's coming, and they're denying it. They won't do anything about it.
Our media is doing the same thing. Everything's going the other direction.
Right.
Everything's going the other direction.
I mean, a curious thing, in the 1970s, Britain was in a fiscal disaster as well. They had decisive leadership with Margaret Thatcher, came to power, radically changed the nation. You know, where's our Margaret Thatcher?
Okay.
That's what I'd like to know.
Okay, well, when we come back, maybe then we need to bring in the ad guy here, and he can kind of help us through some of the ads to counteract this, just in case. Right back.
My big beef with Washington, you're taking enough money from us. We're struggling, we're suffering. Give us a break.
Make a decision, just get it done. The inability to get things done.
We're born free and we're being taxed to death.
How large it is and how it does not reflect our capacity to pay for anything anymore.
They just kind of seem out of touch with what the real workers are doing.
It's just so corrupt. There's so much corruption. Everything that gets passed, they're doing favors for this senator, for this state.
The American people just can never get the straight answers.
Can we afford a 10% cut across the board? Sure you could.
I would probably start by looking at the biggest areas of spending.
Look at all the people in government. They're getting the best of health care and whatnot, and they're getting all these benefits. How about slashing they're paying their benefits first?
I would look at, okay, whatever you're putting in, are you getting something out? If you're not, take it out.
I think we really just have to keep in mind, like, our priorities, what we really need.
The less government, the better.
Back the Cato budget.
We've been telling you all week about the big changes I think, that need to happen to keep America from growing broke and falling into, you know, the pit of despair. But how do we get the rest of America on board without the emergency? That's the key. Fraser Seitel, he is the author of The Practice of Public Relations. Still with us also Ben Sherwood from the Survivors Club, great book, and Chris Edward, who's Chris has written Downsizing the Federal Government. Okay, so how do we sell this to the American people? We need something that counteracts all the people that are denying it in Washington.
You know what it is, Glenn? It's an easy sell. And you just saw those people. It's what you guys are talking about. It's what you said at the top of the show. It's common sense. The government doesn't make any money. The people make the money. The more money that I have in my pocket, the more I'll spend. The more jobs will be created, the economy will flourish. So how do we do it? We start getting at the federal, we start doing what you've been talking about with Chris's Cato budget all week long. We ratchet down the federal spending. Okay. That's what we do. That's the philosophy.
Okay, so but how do we get people that are not paying taxes? I mean, I saw this, did you see this poll this week that was like 48% say that they pay the right amount of taxes, and 49% don't pay any tax. So, I mean, you know, how do we get those people to understand, no, we got to shut this system down and change it dramatically?
You know, part of it is having a rallying cry, having a slogan, having something that people can grab onto. For example, saving our country starts with saving your money. People can understand that. Give back the country to the people who made it. Who are the people who made it? Entrepreneurs, working people. The people in that tape are the people who made this country. Give it back to them. Used to be, you know, Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. No, not anymore. It's my money, stupid. Right. Obama's budget cuts don't cut it. In other words, what Chris Edwards says, President says $17 billion has to be cut out of federal spending. It's a $3.7 trillion budget, 0.5 of 1%. No. What's needed is what you're talking about, $200, $300, $400 billion. His cuts don't cut it.
I saw something that you've been working on. It was a slide. Do we have the slide where the kid is belling up to the school? Do we have that? Explain this.
Now, here's what we did. Based on your whole discussion this week, we did some prototype print ads. Okay. And we did one commercial. Here's a print ad. Fighting Hunger in America, your school lunch program at work. And there you see some rather large children. And the copy says, obesity is the problem, not malnutrition. No federal subsidies for food stamps and school lunches. That seems rather harsh. But as you've talked about this week, it's $100 billion of federal spending on food stamps, which is a notoriously fraud-laden program, right. School lunches, which the government itself says 27% of the kids who participate shouldn't be participating. So there's got to be something in that $100 billion that we can ratchet down. That's what you're talking about.
Okay. Now there's another one on, I think it's defense. Do you have that one?
We did another prototype ad on defense, and this is what you were talking about yesterday. The headline says, preserving democracy for our overseas allies. And there we see our good buddy Hamid Karzai in an embrasso with the adorable Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And the copy says it's their turn to save their country, cut defense spending, bring the troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan. This is what you were talking about yesterday. $160 billion a year, billion with a B, $700 billion defense budget, as Chris says. There's got to be a lot of things in there we can ratchet down.
Give me the Bridge to Nowhere ad.
This is a spot, TV spot. It's to give you a taste for what you could do with a program like the one you've been talking about this week.
And we need bridges because we need to get from one private area to another private area.
The government spends $70 billion of your money each year on infrastructure aid for state projects, often resulting in waste, fraud, bureaucracy, and bridges to nowhere. Wake up, America.
You remember the Bridge to Nowhere. We're going to have to, I think, do a much better job of planning how we spend our money.
It's your money. Back the Cato budget.
Okay, here's the thing. You know, the problem is these kinds of ads would be paid for by a Republican or a Democratic Party or something like that. They need to be the American people. The American people just need to come together, and, you know, some of these entrepreneurs need to come together and protect the system that made them wealthy. All right, we'll be back in just a second. Final thoughts. I am more convinced than ever that if our country runs into trouble, these three things will save us: faith, hope, and charity. But remember, hope, the reason why I put George Washington there is because he was known to tell the truth. We have to tell the truth. This week, we just cut $300 billion from the budget. It's not that hard if you're willing to tell the truth. Unfortunately, the truth gets lost, and we start yelling at each other about politics. Leave politics aside. Let's think about our children and what could possibly happen in our country. Gandhi said, you should use truth as your anvil and nonviolence as your hammer. And anything that doesn't stand the test when brought to the anvil of truth and hammered with nonviolence, reject it. From New York, good night, America.